right. Good evening. We are welcome to the February 4th meeting of the Advisory Committee in Templeton. Start by calling the meeting to order. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from 1/21 meeting. Deb had sent those out. If everyone's had a chance to review them. Anybody has any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Yeah,
I'll make a motion. Oh, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written. I'm sorry, I couldn't find my right button.
I will second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Deb, are you going to have a chance to also watch the chat tonight? I forgot to ask you.
Yes, I've got it up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Do a roll call. Amy?
Abstain.
Okay, Will?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Those will be up on the website tonight after the meeting. All right, next up, we have old business. We have committee updates. We'll start with Amy. I know you said I believe you've had a meeting with your committee since we last spoke.
Yes, we did. So it's going to take a while. It's an exhaustive document. If people are not familiar with the regional agreement, I believe there's a copy on the school committee's website. If anyone is having trouble finding it, just reach out to me at the advisory committee email and I will grab a link for you and pass it along. The process is going to involve, excuse me, the people from the MARS committee, so the regional association, the Mass Association of Regional Schools, they have two people that are working with this committee that I'm on, which consists of school committee members, members at large from Templeton and Phillipston, select board members from both towns, and advisory committee from Templeton and financial committee from Phillipston. And they bring forward the sort of portion of the agreement that we're looking at and then recommend what they think it should look like. And then we have discussion. And then at our next meeting, we'll vote for the actual linguistic change. So it's a lot like when the town amends bylaws. It takes a while. Everyone gets their chance to say what their thoughts are. And I think it's going to be a very interesting process for sure. So we're only working the very beginning of the document, little things like taking out the table of contents for a new table of contents. Revising this document isn't going, just so everyone listening knows, it's not going to do anything to the regional agreement as it currently sits. That would need to be voted on after this agreement is established. And then it's up to the governing body of the agreement, which is the school committee. So a long process, but we're starting it off.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Amy. Anyone have any questions on updates?
Yes. So, Debbie, if I understand you correctly, you're going to go through section, do some wordsmithing or discussion on that section, and then at the next meeting, it will be either approved or not, and then you go on to the next section after that.
In a preliminary way, yes. So when it's all done, they've said the process can take anywhere from 18 months to like 3 years. It really depends on how quickly we move through and how the committee feels about the recommended changes from Mars and what each town brings to the table as well, because that's certainly not dismissed, which is why there are at-large members. There's representation from the government in each town. So yeah, it'll be a slow process of looking at each section. And since our agreement is old, we're looking at a combination of drafts. And I don't think the process could be completed without every person that's on the committee currently. Like, you really do need everybody's suggestions and everyone's thoughts. And I think it's, like I said, I think it's just like when bylaws are revised, it just takes a while. You have to make sure that the legalese is correct, and the Mars people are so experienced. So they serve a lot like the voice of will on this committee, with experience, other cities and towns, and the way other agreements are crafted. So it's a very thoughtful process. And I think the goal is to make sure the regional agreement comes back and everyone's happy with it.
The reason I asked for that is, Deb, when they get to the section where the school was only having to take and end up paying for the 5,000, since we basically we have all the schools in our community, and I mean, the 5,000 with today's prices seems a little low, and I think that I would like to think and have you, when you get to that particular portion, is come back and talk to us. We have a vested interest in that because it has a financial impact on the community.
I agree with you. We're certainly not at that stage yet. But I agree with you. And don't forget, there are Board of Select members on this same committee. And I'm sure they're feeling the same way that you or I would, Will.
Thank you.
All right, does anyone have any other questions for Amy on her update? If not, Tony, any updates or changes on the accountant search?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. As far as mine, we presented on the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, the capital planning report. We went through, gave our capital planning recommendations to the board for them to take back and review. At this point, we probably will be scheduling another capital planning meeting coming up to go over a few items that have arisen. But outside of that, there's nothing. We haven't had a meeting since our last update on it. Does anyone have any questions on my capital planning update?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Because of the impending structural defect deficiency that we have, will some of those items be reviewed at your next meeting as to possibly putting them off?
The ones we put forward, we were pretty comfortable with that. Right now, with the state showing a little bit of an increase in coming out, as well as Adams, the figures that he's been able to look forward and hold back on a lot of the operating side, that I think that the items we put forward, we will be able to still recommend to the board. How the board sees fit after that, they would be then doing their review and town manager's review at that point, town administrator's review. Any other questions on it? All right, moving on to new business. First up on new business, I sent out the conflict of interest in open meeting law paperwork. Is everybody able to receive those? Okay. Need to make sure to get the open meeting law information, the acknowledgement forms to town clerk's office no later than Thursday. February 18th. And all online conflict of interest training program needs to be completed by April 9th, 2021. If you can review them, you can either forward them into the town clerk at their town clerk email address. If you need to send them to me and have me forward them on, I'm willing to do that if you need to. We just need to make sure we get these turned in as a committee. I think it's both are very important, and both are something that we need to show the community that we're doing it, and as we expect the other members to also do. So, anyone have any questions on the?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Since I'm not that sophisticated to take and make a copy of it after I sign it, I don't have that ability. I reviewed it that weekend. I signed it on the 25th. I ended up putting it into an envelope addressed to the town clerk and dropped it in the box on the 28th, both documents.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure as long as she's received it, that's fine. I certainly don't need to be an intermediate. I just want to make sure that everyone has the ability to get it to her as we need to. So that's certainly
The
acceptable.
reason I bring this up is there's been some that have not made it to where they're supposed to be.
Okay. I assume it's none of ours. So I don't think, unless anyone sent something to me that I've missed, but I'm pretty sure everyone's been able to do that. All right, anyone have anything else on the conflict of interest or open meeting law trainings? All right, next up, we have discuss possible bylaw changes in the membership. Tony, I know that's something that you had mentioned. If we could, if you want to start it off, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think that to maybe hopefully increase some interest in the committee, that I think we should slacken, if you will, the requirements. Obviously, you can't have a town employee. You can't have someone that's elected. But me personally, don't see the big deal of having somebody on like the CPC or the Recreation Committee or one of these other committees that they're appointed to also serving on this committee. That's my personal belief. I think we might be able to draw more interest in this committee if we can open the scope of who can join up a little bit. And my hope of bringing this up would be to have us have a warrant article for a bylaw change at the annual town meeting. But that's what I wanted to discuss.
I agree with that, Tony. As far as opinion wise, I think we need to review how it's written. I printed it out and reading through it. I know it says no elective or appointed town officer or town employee shall be eligible to serve on the committee. I had a couple more feeler questions than that. Some of these committees, they have appointed members, even to the things that meet once a year. Some of the members are usually appointed. I can see the no elective town official. I understand that. Even personally on the employee one, I think you really cut your pool down, because department heads are the ones that make the budgets. Department heads are the ones that determine what expenses are going forward to the town administrator. You take a department like an on-call police officer or a on-call firefighter or a CERT team member. And I think a lot of these, because I believe are considered employees by the town, you're really cutting down your pool on members. I'd like to see it to where no town department head or elected official could serve. Again, it's something that it's still the moderator has their ability to, if they feel that the person has a conflict, the moderator, I believe, does not have to appoint someone. If I'm mistaken, then by all means, let me know. And outside of the moderator's time frame when we appoint remainder board members, I don't believe that we automatically have to appoint someone that applies for a committee either. So I do think that having that lessened a little will certainly help us in the future moving forward. having members. I also personally, my opinion wise, I still think 7's too many. I know that there's opinions both ways, and I certainly respect those. I just think that trying to fill 7 is a lot all the time, and I think that 5 is a better number. It's no different than like the Board of Selectmen, who runs our day-to-day activities, is only 5 members. I think that the more members you get, it's great. You get varying opinions, but at the same time, you may not necessarily get that much done. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just think that it's a lot of people on a committee. I've been on committees with 15 people, and I think we leave there every time with scratching our heads, wondering what we just talked about. Those are just my personal opinions. As far as the membership goes, certainly welcome others' opinions on that.
Yeah, I think if you're talking department head, whether you call it out department head or somebody that is involved in creating a budget for a department, maybe say department head and anyone that's involved in creating the budget for a department. Just in case, maybe one department, they get help from somebody in their department.
Mr. Chairman.
My concern is sort of double tapping the people that are already volunteering for everything. I am a parent. I've done PTO, I've done bake sales, I've done all those things. And what happens is it's the same core group of people. I think by removing these constraints from the bylaw as it sits, we run the chance of the same handful of people with their hands on everything. And the only reason I feel like that's bad for this committee is because the varied opinion is what we need. We need people from all different experiences in different parts of our community. In a community our size, we're looking for 2 more people, which I get it. Like, people are busy. I'm not trying to go there. I'm just trying to say, I don't think 7's unreasonable. And I don't think keeping people that are elected or appointed or work for the town off of this committee is a bad thing. I think even if you work in a department, it's still going to color your opinion of the budget. If we have let's just say the assistant treasurer wants to come on the advisory committee, it's going to color her opinions when we get to the budget. And sure, she can recuse for that, but she works in the town hall. She knows all the people. Like, her opinion's just going to be colored by that, or his. I don't even know if that's a real person. I'm sorry. It's going to just make their opinion slant a certain sort of way, where someone who doesn't work for the town, someone who isn't in government, someone who hasn't been appointed to a different committee comes to us with a fresh opinion and with fresh eyes to look at all of these things that we look at from everywhere. And I know myself, if I run another committee, I wouldn't have the energy for both. This committee, while it doesn't take a lot of physical hours, we need to look at a lot of information and process a lot of information. And I think it's important to consider that. Those are just my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Will.
I have to agree with Deb's assessment. This bylaw basically has been put into effect long time ago to end up making sure that we didn't have people from other committees. And as she said, if they're on another committee or a board, not an employee, because it says employees, whether they're elected or appointed. And by the way, DSL has already weighed in on this and said that you should not end up having somebody that even if you have to end up setting them aside as far as their budget, they still have an opinion on the budget. They're involved in the budget per se. And I mean, this is a long-standing bylaw for this community. And if you look at other communities, it's the same there. There's a reason why the bylaw is set up the way it is. I know you, Tom and Tony would like to take and end up seeing other people. But here's my question. Have you seen a problem with us getting a quorum? I haven't. I can only think of one time that with 5 people, we have not made a quorum. I can, as a long-standing member of this committee, I can also tell you that going back to 7 members, there was only one time that we didn't have a quorum. So, I mean, the two aren't equated, but it can happen. It's important to get the diversity of more people on. And like Amy said, if you end up having somebody on multiples committees and boards, they're going to be biased. I'm sorry. It's a name. It's human nature to do that. I mean, I can't see us doing that. And oh, by the way, I understand we all got the email that somebody wants to get on. And oh, by the way, I'm aware of a possible 2 other people that are going to end up putting paperwork in to get on, all because of the structural deficiency that we have in the budget this coming year. I won't go talking about the structural issue. Right.
New members aren't on this meeting's agenda, but I have reached out to them and they will go on the following agenda for them to come forward. Well, I don't disagree with parts of that, Will. I understand you can have not get a quorum with a 7-member board as easily as not get a quorum with a 5-member board. So you can not get a quorum, and I understand that. I just think that, and I disagree with the part that everybody's automatically biased. Maybe I'm a little more naive when it comes to that. I like to think that people can still do what they feel is right for the town while not necessarily doing what they think is wrong for the budget going forward. I understand that it's something that's been longstanding and that's good, I guess, but sometimes things do need to be updated a little. I'm not saying get rid of it. I certainly think there's different ones that shouldn't be on advisory, but I do think some people can handle being on, 2 boards. I understand Amy's concern with, taking out of the same pot of people. Unfortunately, it's kind of like town meeting. We get the same pot of people at town meeting. So the same pot of people are still making decisions in the end. But to try to get various ideas, you may see somebody from, open space. So you could see somebody from, I don't know, a committee the library committee that maybe meets once a year or something, different committees. I'm just throwing that out there, that has a lot of fresh ideas. And we really, especially if we stay with 7 members, that we're looking at having fresh ideas come in. We're not looking to change everything from the past, but you learn from the past, but you move forward with the future. And I think getting as many fresh ideas in to look at things, to see if we're seeing things totally wrong or totally different. And I think that happens. I think that's happening now in the town administrator's office. I mean, Adam's come in with fresh eyes and he's looking at it, and those are different things that are going on. But I just think that having somebody, just because they happen to like history and they want to belong to the historical society or the CERT team, or it shouldn't necessarily defeat the purpose of trying to help out their community a little bit further in the financial aspects, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, as I stated, DLS has already weighed in also and indicated that we shouldn't have anybody from any boards or committees.
That was according to our bylaw they were referring to, though, I believe. I think they were talking about that. According to our bylaw, they felt that we shouldn't have that. If the bylaw was to be changed, I believe that their opinion would also change because it would no longer be listed there. Go ahead, Amy.
Just for clarity, I want to say I'm on the Historical Society board, and we're not a town organization. We're a private, not-for-profit. We apply to money from the CPC just like everyone else, and I'm not part of that process. but it's okay to be on the Historical Society board. And
I was just using that as a,
committee.
that type, I wasn't picking on specifically
Just
historic.
in case somebody's watching and they're like, oh no.
They're always watching.
That's not a town, a board or committee, so then I don't want to take a down player, but it doesn't count towards being on or not.
Oh, that's good, because I certainly would hate to lose Amy over that. Does anyone else have any opinions to discuss on this? Adam, if you can when are articles due for a town meeting, just to have a time frame idea for us?
I would prefer to have them in before the February 24th, but I'm looking at, because the board approves the final warrant, I believe it's April 14th. So, I mean, it could come in later. We could put a placeholder in there for the 24th. But I would like to get as many in before we release the budget. But at the very least, if we get a placeholder there.
Okay.
For the time being.
I just wanted to bring it up, Tom. So good discussion. Take everybody's comments.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, I appreciate that. If anyone's got anything else, certainly if anyone decides to bring anything forward, I think we certainly have at least one more meeting before that, if not more, to try to get it still to Adam as much as we can, as soon as possible. But as he said, we could still have a spot. It's not necessarily a hard firm date. As the further on it gets, it certainly becomes that. Anyone have anything else on that? All right. Next up, discuss the DOR-DLS review, the Division of Local Services. I was contacted Friday about by the DOR's Division of Local Services. They're doing their updated financial management review for the town. I believe the last one that was done was in October 2009 was when it came out. From what I read on that one, advisory really wasn't contacted too much during that one. It didn't appear. However, I was able to speak with them for about 45 minutes. They had questions on financial things. They had questions on when we meet. One thing I will say, they were astonished at how often we meet as a committee. They consider a very active advisory committee meets once a month. When I told them we meet, twice a month and potentially scheduled a third meeting in a month if there's 5 Thursdays, they were relatively shocked when it came to that. Certainly wasn't what they expected. Also, one of the things that they brought up was that they felt that a lot of what we necessarily should be doing, we're kind of double going over stuff that was being gone over by the TA, that was going over by the Board of Selectmen, and that we weren't necessarily, if we're meeting that often, doing. The only time they've seen those type of many meetings was when advisory was looking at a major project for the town, whether they were examining, the example I think they used was the financial software. That if we were looking towards the potential ability of having new financial software in town, whether we were looking into the cost effectiveness of, say, Vadar versus Munis versus, I think there was another one out there, and that for the town, not necessarily stepping in and reviewing a lot of the day-to-day things that we tend to have come up on our agendas that they saw. So basically, it was a pretty low-key telephone interview. Basically, where that was with that. I believe they'll be putting together the full report, and I believe that I'm not sure when that actually will be completed, but they did say they were gathering all the information. I think they were doing pretty much all of it last week, and maybe a couple straggling calls this week. But that, I believe, is That's what I have on the financial management review.
I'm surprised at their comment, Mr. Chairman, about a meeting only once a month, because they're probably not aware of some of the communities. If you look at enough communities, you find that I've run into a couple of communities that actually meet every week.
Like I said, I'm just going by what they said when I was talking to them. I certainly don't know what we talk about every week as much as I'd like to see you guys.
They just may not be aware of other communities.
That's true. The Department of Revenue may not be aware of the different advisory committees, but I'm just going by like I said, what they were talking about, that the ones that they do the Division of Local Services works with. I will say I do not know how many towns the DOR works with. I anticipate quite a few though.
The only comment I'll make is about the 2009 review that they did. I, as a citizen of this community, was very embarrassed by our selectmen at that particular time. They were not very nice to the people that came to talk about their findings when they met, and basically they chased the individuals out. And I know that there was a couple of them that I think I talked to one of them a while back that came into the community, and apologized to him for past selectmen's behaviors. I don't see that this particular time, so that's moving in the right direction, I think.
I agree. Well, I will say that they did say that they felt the town certainly was moving in the right direction and was very much improved from the last time they were here. They felt that, according to them, that we had a good start with moving forward with our finances in the town. They were not unhappy from what I heard. Again, I don't know how the other interviews went on with the other ones they spoke with, but it definitely was, I thought it was a very positive conversation. Anyone have anything else or anything on the chat, Deb, that we need to be aware of?
No, Mike Curry's out there. He just said agreed. Well, it wasn't our finest hour, and we're in a much better place.
All right. Next up on the agenda is to discuss the one-time monies memo that was sent out. This time I'd like to ask our town administrator to take the floor, and I want to review this so that he can, in case we have any questions, and then we can discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the advisory committee. On the topic you just brought up on the Division of Local Services, I do expect us to have a very positive feedback from all the interviews that they sat down and had conversations with all the folks here in Templeton. So that's some good news on that front. But let me transition over to the memorandum that was issued to the select board on January 13th of 21, where in Templeton, many of you folks are aware, I've worked on at least 2 budgets here in town, and we were always able to balance the budget without any use of one-time monies for fiscal year 20 and 21. In 22, our recurring expenses have surpassed our revenues. So therefore, I decided that we have to send this out and share this information with both the select board and the advisory committee. The select board voted unanimously on January 27th to utilize certified free cash to close the deficit. I've been in talks with the superintendent, and everybody's aware of where we're at on the issue that we are faced with. It's not easy, but if I can share my screen here, the financial management policy calls for us to have a plan moving out. If you can see my screen here.
Yes.
Okay. So 21's right here, as you can see, and then in 22, this illustration shows the use of 150K, and this is a working document. So as I'm working on the budget, I'm updating this document, and you can see here where it balances. In these out years, we would have to level fund, because as you see, our revenues are over here and they drop. So if we use $150,000 of certified free cash, we really have to cut down on our expenses to the point of level funding in order to avoid any kind of fiscal cliff. And it's not till about fiscal year 25 where we can regain our financial ground, if you will, and get back to an operational standpoint. And this will require a use of, and I'm using this for illustration purposes, use of stabilization these off years in order to get us through the challenges we face. Now, granted, you see here the BES sale, those are one-time monies, and that's where you see the gray in this chart, wherever that comes in. And down here, if we were to take that 500,000, let's say the select board decides to put that into their stabilization account, that brings us to $1.362 million. Right now we have $862,000 there. It's a healthy stabilization account. We're fortunate where we built that up the last few years, and we have that available. And I can say by using free cash in the fiscal year 22, you are not touching your stabilization. That is the goal for this budget, is not to use any stabilization dollars and to keep that healthy and essentially strong in the out years. Let me stop this share for a moment. And these are just predictions. They're not final numbers by any means. And these projections don't include any potential revenues from our host community agreements as well. Okay, let me pull up. So now the out years. So you can see this on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. The structural deficit, what, why? Well, as we explained, our recurring expenses have surpassed our recurring revenues. So these are really the options below to close a budget gap. And drop down here, I have the voter approved operating override. I can say, I do not think that's financially the way to go right now, as people are facing a challenging time in this pandemic. So that leaves us with these combination of increased revenue, reduce expenses, and increase use of reserves. That's what we're left with to deal with this situation. Now, many of you are probably wondering, well, what's being done now? Well, I can't tell you. I've had this conversation with the select board. They've given me the authority to obviously provide a level service budget, but provide it within my authority and what I deem's best going into the out years. I can tell you right now, from fiscal year 21's original appropriation to the appropriation of fiscal year 22, it's less than 0.5% of an increase. So right now, I'm doing everything I can to keep that budget in line. Now, what else are we doing besides level funding town departments in fiscal year 23? And keep in mind, this obviously has to be approved by the select board. 23 to what the illustration you could see 25. We're looking at the sale of the Baldwin Elementary School, finishing that up. That's another $500,000 coming to the town, where that can be placed into stabilization. Host community agreements, we're pursuing these because these are other ways of bringing in revenue into Templeton, and this is a recurring revenue to increase that portion. As the chairman knows, readjusting capital planning, cutting down on leases, cutting down on anything that could be a recurring expense into the out years. We're doing everything possible to provide funding to our capital, but at the same time, keeping a minimal to the operating end. And obviously maximizing our FEMA and CARES Act for COVID expenses. These are challenging times. These are decisions that have to be made. And I feel confident of getting through fiscal year 22, but the out years will be a challenge. And I really wanted to share this with all you folks here to understand the challenges we face. And it's not going to be easy, but it's something that I think if we're united as a town coming together and sharing this information and proceeding forward in a way where we can get through these challenging times, it'll be a lot easier. I can tell you, I talked to Dr. Cassavant. He's concerned about the out years as well. There's communication going, and right now I think we're planning appropriately. We're looking at how we can sustain ourselves. The last thing we want to do is spend out of control and hit a fiscal cliff, and that's when bad things happen. That's when layoffs happen and everything else. So we want to sustain what we have, but at the same time provide the services to the residents of Templeton, and for them to get their needs through the capital. So right now we're looking at all those options. We're pursuing these measures, and I will stay in touch with all of you in regards to say if there's any questions of me. I'll be more than happy to answer those, but I just wanted to give the advisory committee the information. I know we'll be sitting down at budget time looking through everything, and you're not going to see a significant anything significant major initiative wise. You're going to see pretty much this budget that we presented forward previously, but with additional ways to cut down on those expenses.
Hey, thank you, Adam. Does anyone have any questions for Adam about the this memo?
Just a couple of comments, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
My understanding is that the school budget came in with initially they came in with 5%, at my understanding. They got a grant that reduced it down to 3%. I'm sure you didn't figure on them having an increase in their budget greater than 2.5%. So that would be an impact on our budget. And how does that impact the deficit of the 500,000 and the fact that we may end up having to use more free cash?
So if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Spring, great question. Actually, for the illustration purposes for the out years chart I put up, I actually used 3.5%. For budget purposes, we use the education escalator of 2.5%. So let's say they come in, I have them listed at 2.5%. So let's say right now I'm at 18,906 over the last fiscal year appropriation. So it would cause an increase on the use of free cash. I'm not sure where the 500,000 came from. Right now I'm looking at $150,000 of certified free cash. I believe it was in my memorandum that we have roughly 500K left, depending upon where the snow and ice and the capital land off. I believe that's where you got that, Mr. Spring. And we're doing what we can. And of course, any kind of increase on the school end will drive up. But I can tell you what we can control is the town departments and keeping them in line. And I could say the department heads have been very understanding. They're doing what they can to keep their budgets as tight and lean as possible, and we'll just continue proceeding forward that way. I will continue my conversations with Dr. Cassavant and Monty Tech as well, and we could just work together and try to get through this the best way we can, especially for 23 and 24.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Adam, is there any ways, any room on any of the budgets to make some additional cuts to some of the expenses for this coming year that would help us reduce the amount that we need from free cash? If there's opportunities there, I'd like to take an end up, that's up to you, but is there any opportunities there where we can end up looking at that to help us out?
Right now I could say that There's expenses that obviously we have our collective bargaining agreements. We have to fulfill those. We have some areas in there, I did include the raises for non-union personnel. And then we have a potential or a CBA coming down the road. But keep in mind, if you cut that into intergovernmental, you're getting to the point where, and I was instructed by the board to provide a service budget. This is a service budget as much as can be. But if we were to cut that portion of the budget, and I didn't release this yet, but you would get to your appropriation actually lower than the fiscal year 21 appropriation. And then therefore I wouldn't be providing a service budget. I would be actually cutting it below level funding.
If I may, is it prudent to take an end up when we have a deficit and we have to use free cash to end up getting raises? And the reason I ask this is I would rather see folks forego some raises now, keep them employed in future years when we end up running into more difficulties.
And I've had this conversation with department heads, and it'll be the same for the department heads with regards to their employees. Going into a level funded budget, if that's what the board chooses to do, they will have to find that within their budget.
I think I'd like to just make a quick comment on that. Will, I understand what you're saying on that, but I also think a lot of the people out there right now with everything going on can use as much as they can make, unfortunately. I know most of the town employees don't make a huge salary. I think it's something that as they move forward, a minimal amount is still keeping them going forward as they're. And I can guarantee no raise that we're going to give them is going to account for how much their health insurance will go up and how much their other stuff will go up. So I think it's a fine line to try to walk as far as looking to the out years, but you also have to still move forward with 1 year at a time and then hope to find some way. And there's got to be other ways out there. I see other communities doing it, bringing in additional revenue sources in the outcoming years. And that might be something that, whether it's different businesses coming into town or whether it's, finally being through with this pandemic and we can finally start operating as a community again together. I think that it's a very delicate balance. And, I applaud for a budget that only goes up 0.5% in a time when you're trying to still provide services is in my mind, from what I've seen from budgets, very, very unusual. So that's excellent.
The reason I brought it up, Mr. Chairman, is I just don't want us to go through what we did at the last time we had a structural deficit, and we had to take and lay off employees. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I won't go over them.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Adam, in the recurring revenues, have you looked at the impacts of COVID and this is actually a couple part question, the impacts of COVID and what that is doing to the revenue? And if it is affecting the revenue, is it covered by the CARES Act or can it be covered by the CARES Act?
The CARES Act, I'm going to put this as simple as I can. So right now we were approved to deficit spend, and you'll see that in the BBA for an account. So let's say one of our employees, for whatever reason, got the COVID and was out, and then we had to fill that shift and provide overtime costs. That would be an expense that can be incurred to that account. But what we're approved for is a drawdown number. So you have that money that you have to submit in a quarterly report to the Administration of Finance. It's a very tiresome process that we need to, but that money is basically taken down from our deficit account.
So to me, that's more on the expense side. Have you found any effects of COVID on the recurring revenues?
The impact of our UGGA dollars, especially like, let's say last fiscal year when we budgeted for 1.522 million roughly, then it dropped to 1.48. That what saved us last fiscal year was the increase in our new growth. So there was a hit on the state aid, but we were able to recover that within the new growth number because we budget conservatively with our new growth. So the key is to really watch all those. I mean, you've had some effects with your MART, people not transporting as much. You've had some impacts in other areas of the budget. I think meals tax would have grown significantly up to this point. It has been coming in healthy, but I think we could have went up in some other areas if it wasn't for the COVID. The COVID
But those are not funds that you can request a refund through COVID CARES Act, right?
That's correct.
Like the meals tax. If say, look, we would have got 40,000, but we only got 30, you can't request the 10,000 through CARES Act. Is that correct?
Correct. We don't have revenue replacement. That's another challenge we have.
Isn't it a portion of the CARES Act though, Adam, to where you can put in for revenues lost on certain items? I know I remember reading it somewhere. I've had to do a lot of reading on the CARES Act with our expenses over, and some reason I seem to remember coming across to where you can put in for certain revenues lost. There was a list of ones that were acceptable and not. I don't know if, as we've gone through the CARES Act money, I know, I'm sure you guys have looked at it with a fine tooth comb, but there might be some, certainly I'll paw through my paperwork too and see if I can find something to send over to you where there was lost revenues that were possible, I think is what Tony was asking on some of that. I know at one point, I think there was ambulance revenues. If you lost ambulance revenues due to that, there's actually, I think, a section, and a few of the others I don't know about different businesses if we lost income from that, but it might be something that it's worthwhile looking into for down the road, just in case they do come out with more fundings on that.
We can only hope for revenue replacement. I think a lot of municipalities, and keep in mind that this structural deficit that we're facing, I could tell you, I've spoken to other town administrators and other folks, and they're facing a lot more of a challenging situation than we are with their deficits or deficit that they're. But I think as long as we're planning, we're preparing, we understand it. That's the first part of addressing a problem, is to really confront it. And by me sharing this information, and we're applying any qualifying expenses we can for FEMA or CARES, that is what we've been doing, and we will continue to do that. We were fortunate where they actually extended the CARES to the end of this next, it was December that just passed, and they actually extended another year, which put us into where we're not trying to get everything done all at once. We have more time to really do this into fiscal year 22.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask Adam about the use of the one-time monies for the budget? Don't know if we necessarily need a motion. There's nothing really to vote on that. I think that it's as long as we're been advised of it and appraised of it, I think that's good for us without hearing any of the major concerns, unless someone has something else they'd like to.
I don't know. Do we want to kind of vote on it as a committee that we agree or disagree with the approach?
We could do that. Yeah, that certainly, I think, would be an acceptable thing. I'd certainly entertain a motion either way on.
So I'll make a motion that we agree with the town administrator's plan to deal with the structural deficit. Is that enough? Is that comprehensive enough?
No, I think that's fine in my opinion, I think. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, does anyone have any more discussion on?
Well, I have to agree that using the free cash is the better way to go. I personally, I like to take and stay away from stabilization as long as we can. In fact, if we can build up the free cash through watching this year's budget, it would help the outlying years, that if we needed to take and end up using some more monies, that we go to the free cash again before we go to stabilization.
Does anyone have any other discussions on the one-time use? Deb, anything in the chat?
No,
Okay,
we're good.
all right, I'll entertain our roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Nice job on that, Adam. Next up is something I also think that we might have some questions if we have questions for Adam. Is the sidewalk, the use of the capital stabilization account to fund the sidewalk machine that's needed for the town. This did come before capital planning, and capital planning did recommend putting it forward to town floor as a separate article. Adam and I have gone back and forth, agreeing and disagreeing on how it should go forward as an article, and at the end of it, we can still sit down and talk afterwards. So I guess that's a good thing. His way of solving it and putting it forward, in my opinion, as more I talked with him, makes a lot of sense. It would be to come out of the capital stabilization account. The cost on the machine, I believe, was approximately between $210,000 and $215,000, which would include not only the sidewalk machine, also an over-the-rail mower, I believe, if I recall from capital. And it would, the amount in the account currently right now is $218,000. So it would pretty much use this capital stabilization account. However, it's something, in my opinion, that is a necessary item. We felt it was a large item to just specifically come out of capital and leave nothing for the other departments to move forward with. But I think going this direction is a solution of something that's the reason for capital money to be put there is for capital. So this kind of, in my opinion, solves that. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit on it, or if you just want to see if people have questions for you.
Okay, so I would like to know what's wrong with the current. I saw it come by my house today, so I'm just kind of curious. So what's wrong with it? And then I'll follow up with that, Adam. Thanks.
Well, right now it's on the brink of failure. It has issues. It goes out of service here and there. It is operating right now, and that's why this has been coming. This went in front of the capital committee when I was on it. So this is the second time it's come in front of the capital.
How old is it?
Oh, the year, I would have to check with Bob Sozik on the year. I don't have it in front of me tonight. I could follow up and get back to you on that. I know it's pretty old.
Okay.
And the DPW director, Bob Sozik, has basically been telling us, like, this machine's going to go. It's just a matter of time. And quite frankly, you have an option here. I just don't want the town to be in a predicament where we don't have any plan whatsoever. This, at least, we have the capital stabilization dollars, a little over roughly $215,000 in this account. This were to be approved by town meeting. This does require a 2/3 vote of town meeting. And what would happen is, if it passes, the issue is resolved. If it fails at town meeting, then there would be an adoption of a bylaw. Keep in mind, all this has to be approved by the select board Wednesday, if we're going to proceed in this fashion, for an adoption of a bylaw holding the landowners responsible for clearing their sidewalks. But it gives a clear direction on, we could either do this if we want to continue this service, or we do that. And it provides the residents of a town with an option on how they want to proceed. And I think
you can't really have the landowners clear their walk because the town technically owns that land.
Well, the bylaw would be, like, at least in municipalities where I was at before, let's say I own that property. Outside of your direct property, that sidewalk, you would be responsible for clearing.
Gardner has the same bylaw. You're responsible for clearing your the sidewalk in front of your property. They do come down and clean it, and they do have a machine that does it. However, they don't, if they didn't, they would, technically they can fine you, I believe, according to the bylaw.
Right. So Adam, let me follow up with a question, and maybe it's better if I just call Bob and ask him, and he could explain this to me. So I'm trying to figure out how this little machine that basically, I don't know what else, it probably sweeps the walk and then snow blows it, has a snowblower attachment, is $200,000, but a brand new front end loader is only $176,000.
It does also include an over the rail mower, Tony. We do the brush on the over the side. It also, I believe, included tracks. If you hold on a second, I could probably go grab my capital planning paperwork if you want me to.
I'm just, it just in my brain, especially when I saw it go by today, it's like, what makes that 200,000 where a front end loader is so much more?
Sometimes smaller machines are even, I think it also sands as it's going along, or salts, if I remember correctly, and there's a unit on the back.
All right. I mean, I trust that you guys have done the diligence and the prices and stuff. Is this a brand new machine that you're looking at?
That's
Yes.
what it would look. Yeah.
No options for a used one?
Well, the challenge you get when you get into used equipment is it doesn't come with the warranties. It doesn't come.
I agree. Okay. Just want to make sure you did the diligence of looking.
So ultimately, this would be where we come in front of the town. We have a plan where the town wants to proceed forward with, and quite frankly, we leave it up to town meeting to decide. I think by at least providing them with the options, we have done our due diligence as a town, and I think that's an important part of being able to provide services to our community, and asking the town, do they want this service? Are they willing to invest in this service? And quite frankly, if they're not, then we need to come up with a solution. And how do we proceed forward? But adopting a bylaw. And quite frankly, this has been going on for a while, and I'm just concerned that next year we come around winter and then the snow machine goes and we have no plan in place, then you can only kick the can down the road for so long.
Well, my concern with adopting a bylaw would be there's probably many members of our community that physically can't go out and do their driveway, or they maybe have someone clear their driveway, but they can't do their sidewalk. So, I mean, I know I wouldn't even want to do my side. I've got a long sidewalk and a snowblower, and I just wouldn't want to do it.
Even snow blowing a sidewalk, it's a long for a
no, because it's not like if you get a foot of snow, there's just a foot. You have everything the plow pushed up on there.
Correct. And I think that, in my opinion, I when I first saw this, I was hesitant. I checked with Adam on what was in the account. I was very curious on if this was going to cut away from other things and how we we're going to proceed with it. But Tony, I agree with you on that part. That certainly, I think a bylaw for the homeowners to take care of their own sidewalk, and I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house, so I'm still. I think that it's something that I think that's not necessarily the way to go. I think that the possibility of using the town, letting the townspeople decide if they want to use the capital stabilization money, which this is a capital purchase, and I think it's something that it would be able to rightfully use that for and continue to provide a service, because as we're putting in more roads in town, we're requiring more sidewalks, and we're having, if we want people to use the sidewalks versus walking down the street when we're, during the winter, it's a difficult thing. Nobody likes driving down the street when you got someone driving, walking down the middle of the road. So, in my opinion.
I think this is a great opportunity for folks, if they're passionate about this service, to show up to town meeting and really voice where they stand, and to provide them with that option.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes, go ahead, Will.
I have a number of comments and questions for Adam, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Yep.
First of all, I looked at that whole memo that you gave, and I tried to look at the big picture as to the town. I would say that from a perspective of spending that amount of money, along with the fact that you have to have an employee work that, and there's I don't know how many miles of sidewalks do we have that we have to take care of.
I wouldn't have the mileage, Will. I don't.
Well, I just looking at this whole thing, I would say that 90 to 95% of the community doesn't have sidewalks. I'll make that statement, and I pretty well think that's where we are. So we're asking the other 5 or 10% of the people to take and to do something for their house. To have a bylaw to have somebody take care of it is, to me, is unenforceable. Number one, you have some, like Tony says, he's got a long area. You've got businesses. Take a look at Baldwinsville Road, for example. You have a business that would be responsible for it just before the bridge. You have some lots that nobody lives on. They're just lots. And who's going to take care of that? And then on top of that, you, like somebody pointed out, you have elderly. Elderly aren't going to go out and do it per se. That's another issue. So, I mean, I question having the bylaw, number one. Number two is spending that amount of money when you end up gave us a comparison review of other communities, and other communities don't necessarily do their sidewalks. One of the options is to be above the purchasing this equipment. I mean, I'd like to take and end up seeing us purchase other equipment. We could have this monies go to other equipment rather than a sidewalk plow that's only basically used for the summertime, if I understand it correctly. Yes, it's got a mower, but mainly it's you're going to be using it for the sidewalks in a very limited fashion. Then on top of that, I ended up having to take an opportunity to take and end up driving into Baldwinsville today. Along Baldwinsville Road. And all that sidewalk was plowed. Well, guess what? An elderly gentleman, and I can tell you who the elderly gentleman is, if anybody would like to know. He lives on Baldwinsville Road. He was walking. Was he using on the sidewalk? No, he was walking on the road. Because isn't there a liability for when the town plows it and it has snow, and if something happens, Adam, am I correct in saying that?
Well, if somebody were to get hurt,
Yes.
I mean, if they're walking alongside of the road.
No, on the sidewalk. That the town is plowed.
I mean, the town could be, anything could happen at any point. I mean, we're in people could go after the town for whatever reason. It's just a matter of whether the case can be won is the question.
Yeah. And then on top of that, going further down Baldwinsville Road, and by the way, that was a senior citizen. He's in his 70s, and he doesn't live too far from there. He actually, when I came back, he was actually almost in the center of Templeton. Going towards Baldwinsville, I ran by another gentleman. Was he walking on the sidewalk? No, he was not. He was in his 50s, and the gentleman actually works for the highway department. So I was saying, wow, if he won't walk on something that the department is, why would other people do it? Coming back, I saw him again. He was further down, and he still wasn't walking on the sidewalk, walking on the road. I came into Templeton Center, and I noticed a woman in the center. Where was she walking? She was walking on the road. So, I mean, I see this, and when we spend that amount of money for a sidewalk plow, I question it if it's in the best interest of the community. There is another option, by the way, and I have to give credit where credit's due. We have a selectman, Selectman Bennett. I heard that he had found a Mass General Law, Chapter 85, Section 6, as to how to take and end up addressing the fact of how to take and end up just one more option on doing the sidewalks, and how to take and end up paying for it rather than having the equipment and the employees work and all that charge goes against your general budget. Well, that Mass General Law gives the assessors the ability to take and assess any sidewalk in front of your house and increase your assessment to help pay for plowing. Now, I know, and I'm sure that everybody else knows, if you went to the people that the sidewalks are, they may want their sidewalk plowed, but are they willing to take and end up paying more in their taxes?
No, because I didn't
think
have a
not.
choice that the sidewalk was put in front of my house.
Right, I
My
understand that.
subdivision was built.
I understand that, but I'm trying to make a point here that you probably wouldn't want to do that. So that option is probably not a viable one, but it is available. Like I said, the last option is to take and end up not plowing it like some communities. Since people are going to walk on the road, why are we expending monies for equipment when we can use it somewhere else? And the labor that goes along with it for that. I mean, and have the liability if somebody walks on the sidewalk to get hurt. I want to bring out those points because I want to look at the big picture of this thing, because it has more than one technical. It's not just let's spend some money and go do some sidewalks. I mean, I don't have a sidewalk by my house, and I think that 90% of the community doesn't have sidewalks.
Some of the reasons, Will, that people don't walk on the sidewalk is because that sidewalk machine currently does not do a very good job. The current machine it just plows it out of the way as basically like a V plow. It basically, I don't believe it treats anything behind it. The newer machine is going to maintain the sidewalk a lot more. Whether we like it or not, if we maintain, the town potentially is liable either way. So we're liable if we don't take care of the sidewalk and someone gets hit by a car and there's a sidewalk there and the town's gonna get sued. You're responsible if they trip on the sidewalk, as you are now if they fall on a crack in the sidewalk. So either way, if someone gets hurt, the town's still gonna be liable. It's not just used during the wintertime. This is a machine that would be used year round. Be used also as an over-the-rail mower, be used for a lot of different things like that. I understand that there's enough, it's frustrating when people aren't walking on the sidewalk and it looks like it's been done, but if it's not doing an adequate job, what's the point? Other than trying to hope that the sun will melt it down.
Well, I didn't want to take and bring it up, but I also in my travels, and because it didn't pertain to Templeton per se, I went by and I saw the sidewalks in Gardner being taken by their snow blowing machine. And I'll tell you, you ended up saying they didn't do a good job. They didn't do a very good job on their sidewalks also. So
Yeah, this machine, Will, has got a snowblower attachment on it.
Yep.
On the front. It's not a plow. It's a snowblower attachment that goes on the front and essentially it's just obviously bigger than a regular snowblower. And it does a decent job, but I think what Tom's saying is it's old, so I don't think maybe it does as good a job.
And just, Tony, to your question you had earlier, it's a 2002.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Go ahead, Will.
the reason I bring it up is I saw Gardner and theirs was not doing any better than ours. There are some sidewalks that I saw our machine that did a fairly good job.
Can we just focus on Templeton though?
Deb, go ahead. You had
No, so I was just going to say, I want to make sure I understand it correctly. Essentially, you're looking to buy this new sidewalk machine that's going to take care of the snow removal. It has some other functions to it, so it can be used year round. The cost would be taken care of through the capital stabilization fund. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and there's appropriate funding in there to pay for it, correct?
That's correct.
So that's option one. And then we would continue to have, if you have sidewalks there, they would continue to be cleared by the town, along with whatever else the sidewalk machine would do. The other option, if the town choose, if townspeople choose that, hey, we don't want to spend the money on this, is that a bylaw could be adopted where homeowners would have to go out and be responsible for the sidewalk in front of their home and clearing it. Is it going to be one versus the other? Or, you know, for instance, Will mentioned there is that third option. I don't love it because I'm a homeowner with a sidewalk in front of me. But if townspeople wanted to look at that third option, there is Mass General Law, Chapter 85, Section 6, that's just not being put in front of them. So is it what you are intending to put in front of people is either the sidewalk machine or clear it yourself? Is that correct?
That's my intention. Now, granted, it's up to the select board ultimately to decide Wednesday on what they want to put onto the warrant. I feel we have an obligation to the town and the folks to provide them with that option. Do they want to continue the service? Because a service costs money. A service is not cheap. And if I continue that service, here's your option. We have the money available. We can purchase it, and then we don't have to worry about the bylaw. Let's say the people in town meeting say, no, we don't want to purchase it. Then they have the alternative to adopt the bylaw. And at least at town meeting, we come up with two solutions or two ideas to solve this issue. And I just don't want to continue kicking it down the road.
Right.
But you do have you can't put an article on there that basically says, well, if you vote no for this warrant article or this bylaw change goes in. They'd have to be separate.
They would be.
Right. So then what happens if people say no to both? So this machine, is it predominantly used for snow clearing?
For the most part, and then sweeping.
Okay. So is there other options of, and I'm not suggesting we have to buy a John Deere, but a John Deere tractor with a snowblower that might be more than half the price. With a snowblower attachment.
Well, and I'm leaving that with the discretion of the DPW director, because the way the draft article would be written, it would be for the 213, 750 or any sum lower. So whichever, let's say he was able to find an option that worked, that he felt could appropriately provide that service to the residents. It does the way the article's drafted.
Yeah, I don't like that way. I'd like them, and I know there's not a lot of time, but I'd like to see them do their due diligence to say, okay, we need a vehicle to do X, Y, and Z. It's this much. We do X most of the time, and we can save a lot of money by doing this. I don't, and maybe they've done this already, but I just think that they should look at options. Sometimes you got to solve an 80% of the 100% problem, because the 100% costs too much, and the benefit you get from that extra 20% really isn't worth half the money. So, like a mower, a mower attachment.
That brings up two questions, Tony.
Hold on a second, Will. Deb.
Sorry, I have two comments coming in from YouTube. Scott Dill is watching. He asks, are sidewalks required to be taken care of by the town that are located in school zones where the kid's supposed to walk? So if we have sidewalks in front of the schools, is it going, if say we didn't buy the new sidewalk machine and residents were required, through this new bylaw to clear their sidewalk, who would then still be responsible for those sidewalks that are in front of town buildings?
Well, and that's what we're going to have to come up with if the town were to proceed forward. And the question ultimately is, how are we going to move forward with this? Do we want to continue this service? And quite frankly, Mr. Sozik will be at the select board meeting to discuss this with the select board.
So Adam, let me follow Debbie's question up, or actually Scott's question. The school department decided this year to take over plowing of their parking lots, right? Okay. Does that include the sidewalks?
The sidewalks on the town road?
No. Well, in front of the school.
Well, the sidewalks in as far as I understand it, the sidewalks near the school and on their side, they take care of the sidewalks on the other side are our responsibility.
That's in front of, well, right, that's in front of a resident. Okay.
I know at the high school company, there's no sidewalk on the school side. When it's in front of the school, the sidewalk's actually on the opposite side of the road going down Ballinville Road,
Okay.
right in front of the school area.
I think
One
he was
other comment. Sorry, Will. One other comment. Bob May mentions that 2 comparable towns hire out this service. So has that been something that's been discussed?
Internally, it has been discussed, but the cost associated with that service would not be, for the town's purposes and what we're facing right now, an appropriate way to move forward.
So you feel it's more fiscally responsible to purchase the machine as opposed to contracting out the service itself?
That would be, and keep in mind when you have these contractors, you have to make sure they go out and follow up with them. That it's not like telling an employee, "Oh, we need you to do this section," and they're right on it. It becomes a challenge because it costs more per hour, as well as getting responsible folks to respond to those calls as well. And they're hard to find.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
The East Templeton School, basically, I think they take care of their sidewalk by the school because of the busing, because it's set back. Number one. Number two is that,
School in East Templeton.
yeah, in Templeton Center. I'm talking Templeton Center.
Okay.
What happens if we buy the machine and we have, you said that you needed to take of course you need employees to take care of it. What happens if we have to take and make a cutback and we're going to spend over $200,000 this year, and the outlying years don't look very, very promising? What happens if we have to make some cutbacks? That would be a piece of equipment that's not in use per se. I mean, there's some other issues that overall have to be addressed as the big picture, and not, okay, we're going to take care of these sidewalks per se. And the fact that the homeowners are not going to end up taking care of their sidewalks in front of, if you put the bylaw, if it just doesn't pass. It's impossible to take and end up saying and enforcing people to take and end up doing that. I see that in other communities, and our community is no different than any other community. Other communities have the same issue. They do not address it per se. They probably don't even plow their sidewalks unless it's in the major part of, like a Baldwinsville Center, in front of the businesses or in front of town buildings.
Right. So Will, to follow up on that, I think like down Baldwinville Road, people do walk on there, and you don't want them walking Baldwinville Road in the road. That's probably not safe. In my neighborhood, most people, even when in the summer, walk actually in the street versus the sidewalks. So I think it's sort of it's area dependent on where you would really need this machine.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, Tony. It's the gentleman usually uses the sidewalk when he walks, because he and his wife and some others also walk on that side, the sidewalk in Baldwinsville. But
yeah, they got nice.
I try to point out the fact that it was plowed. He is not, and there's other people that are not walking on the sidewalk, and it has been plowed or snow blowed or whatever the machine does.
Yeah, but I'm sure that when it first gets done, it probably leaves a little bit of snow on there. So it's probably slippery. So I don't blame them for not walking on there. But you take a risk on Baldwinville Road, walking out in the road.
Does anyone have anything else on the sidewalk machine, or an opinion that they'd like to put forward to send to the Board of Selectmen when it's reviewed with them?
Yeah, so maybe Adam, if you can talk to Bob, and maybe that machine clears it so much faster, and therefore the manpower is less if you had a lesser machine or something of that nature. If you could just see if Bob's explored those things, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, were you looking for a motion?
Against putting forward a the purchasing this out of capital stabilization.
Mr. Chairman, were you looking for a motion to take it end up sending to the selectmen and probably stating is having them look at the big picture per se and all the issues, not just the fact of purchasing and the bylaw?
Well, what I'm looking for is to hopefully for some type of motion, whether it's, for or against, to on the purchase of this machine out of capital stabilization, knowing that the bylaw is an option. As Adam said, it's only an option. They're all options. They got to be 2/3 of a vote, I think, at town meeting, which is why capital put forward that it should be on a separate article. Like I said, I don't want to either way but I think we should send something where it is using stabilization money in that we should send something to the board, at least in our committee's opinion on it either way.
So yeah, I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision one way or another.
I have to agree with Tony. And you mentioned that Bob's going to be at the select board meeting next Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean,
So he'll be.
If I can just jump in here first. We have a decision that would need to be made, and Bob's going to articulate his point on why he believes this piece of equipment is the best. I'm not a DPW director. I know I trust my DPW director, and I know he would try to provide the best piece of equipment for his folks and to provide the safety for his employees. But at the same time, I do want people to know, I think by providing two options, we're giving a choice to the people at town meeting to decide. And I don't want to get bogged down with, well, I don't like the bylaw, or I don't like using the capital stabilization. That's fine. But I think we need to have a direction for the people in town and a plan on how we can clearly move forward.
Okay, so Adam, can I just interject here? So my point is, say this machine does three things. It snow blows, it sweeps the sand. Well, of course we don't have sand anymore. It sweeps, and it does some mowing attachment. It has a mowing attachment. So Bob's going to say, look, I have these three functions I've got to do. I can get this one machine, does it all. It's $200K. That's great. Okay. If the town turns it down, he's got nothing. He has nothing to do any of them. So my point of looking at alternatives, is it better to get that, you know what, we use it 80% of the time for snow blowing. That's the biggest need. Even some of those tractors, you could put a sweeper on them. But is it something that, it's better to have an 80% solution than nothing, and therefore saving the town money? I mean, I understand he has X amount of tasks that this machine has to do. So he's trying to find something that fits the bill for all of them, which I get. Mm-hmm. But maybe we're not in the position to do that. Because then if it gets voted down and the bylaw gets voted down, then what?
Then we provided a plan that was shot down. But at least we came up with something.
Yeah, but I
provided them with the options. And quite frankly, I think by providing nothing to the town is not a good solution either.
Well, I agree with you, but I think that there's a middle road in there too. That's just my opinion.
Tony, that to take and make your point, if both of them get turned down, I would think that the town does not want to have their sidewalks plowed. That's the alternative. You don't buy the machine. You don't have a bylaw that people have to take care of it. So if you're not taking care of it, and you're not buying a machine, that means we're not going to take in snow blow or take care of the snow on sidewalks.
That's like saying they want their road plowed because they didn't vote for this truck, so you don't plow the roads.
I think that's a little different. I get your point, but I think it's a little different. But what if someone now has 100 feet of sidewalk, and now because some people in the town voted, oh yeah, you got to go clear it, they get hurt, they have a heart attack, whatever, then who's liable for that?
Well, if I could say, I believe it was seven of our comparison communities have adopted such bylaws. This isn't, at least in the Wild West where I'm from, it's quite a few of these communities have ordinances and bylaws, and they're enforceable, and the sidewalks are cleared.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I think the town providing a service costs money.
How many of those communities that you're discussing are more of a rural community where Chicopee's not? I grew up in Greenfield. We had a sidewalk in front of our house that I shoveled many times, but it was maybe 45, 50 feet. You know, it's not,
No, I get it.
I got probably 300 in front of my house.
Well, that's why
That's wear and tear on my snowblower. So I probably have to go buy a newer, bigger one.
7 out of our 10 comparison communities that are similar to Templeton have adopted the bylaw in regards to snow removal. Quite frankly, there will be some outstanding issues that the town will have to work with, town-owned property, taking care of this, taking care of that, and Bob will have to come up with a solution for those properties as well.
Okay, then I have a question. And this is something that you have to think of before you put a bylaw in place. If I'm responsible for clearing the sidewalk in front of my house, which is technically on town property because there's a 10-foot easement, is the town going to give me that 10 feet of land? So I own it all.
Well, with the town,
There's
anything outside
from
of your property,
from the road, 10 feet onto my property is an easement.
at the end of the day, if the town can't take care of the sidewalks and we have nothing on the books, then we're back to square one.
Okay, then if I have to clear a town sidewalk, I'm going to charge you for it.
So I don't mean to interrupt. Scott Dale has made a comment on YouTube. Leave it to the voters. If all the facts are presented, that is all the town can do, as Adam stated. Just have all the pros and cons laid out that makes it clear to the taxpayers. And I agree. I have to say, I agree with that comment.
And
Just one point.
I'm not arguing for or against. I just think that the town should have the option on how they want to proceed.
Just remembering that if those people that don't have sidewalks show up, it's going to be turned down. Okay, because we know that majority of the community does not have sidewalks, and they probably won't end up having a bylaw passed either. So now we're in that position. So that could happen, Adam. And I just, I just want to point that out, is that's the risk of putting it out there. Depending on who shows up, like any town meeting, if those people that have sidewalks show up, they'll end up getting the sidewalk plow. If the people that don't have sidewalks and they don't want to spend the money and they don't want a bylaw, then that's the way we're going to end up going.
So, Will, I would take it a step further, because it's town money that we would have to spend. I think everybody should vote on the bylaw to buy or not buy the piece of equipment. But I don't think people without sidewalks should vote on a bylaw.
Amy, you had something, I think.
I was going to say, I don't have a sidewalk, but I have guardrails, and to not have to clear behind the guardrail is worth it to me, because the guardrails in the summer overgrow and it's ridiculous. There are some points, even just in my small neighborhood, but especially over by my parents, that get so overgrown by August, if you drive too close to the side of the road, you feel like you're in the trees. So I think it's a big pill to swallow, because it looks like we're using all the money to buy a single piece of equipment. And personally, it feels like the highway department is always looking for equipment. But the reason they're always looking for equipment is because we have roads and sidewalks, and it has to be safe and it has to be cleared. We're a wintry place that damages stuff year round. We have grass. So I'm not saying whether I'm for or against it at this point. I think I need more information, but everyone needs to remember, first of all, we're supposed to vote on stuff. It's supposed to go to the town. It's always a roll of the dice on who shows up at town meeting 100% of the time. And there's more than one angle to this. It isn't just about snow, even though it's February. It's not just about snow.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Amy. When you started saying that, I thought that it does do other things. And because it's winter out and I saw it today with snow, I guess I tended to focus on that. But you're right, if it's good for other things that other town residents that don't have a sidewalk would benefit from. So, yeah.
Does anyone have anything new to add to this at this point? I think we've talked on it long enough. If no one's willing to put anything forward, at least the board has got our input on what comments people have had, which I believe they don't need a vote from us. I just think it's always nice to give our input, which is good. And we'll go on to the next topic.
Thanks for presenting that, Adam. I appreciate it.
Got it.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Do you need me here any longer, or am I good?
I don't think I have anything. We got a few more things, but I don't know unless someone needs you here. I think we're all set. If you need to.
Well, there's
get out.
two items on there about the 22 budget and 21 budget that they can maybe get his perspective.
I'll stay.
Okay. Next on the agenda is to discuss the advisory committee webpage. Will, this is a topic you want to brought up?
Yeah, I looked at the webpage, and there's in the center portion of it, there's a lot of recommendations that need to be archived. And when you look at the amount of documentation on there should be more stuff put on. And I looked at other towns in comparison to ours, and the way ours is set up now, it doesn't seem to be simplified and user friendly as other communities. And I'd like to end up seeing that change so that we have the policies on, so we can put our recommendations on and not have the old ones, and have the Association of Town Finance handbook and some other documents also, some of which we're going to be talking about tonight later on in the subjects. So I'd like to end up seeing us clean that up a little bit over the next 6 months to a year or so, to end up seeing if we can end up getting that to look a little bit better and more presentable, so that people can end up finding information on it.
Adam, is there any money in the budget to put together a person that does that, updates web pages and all that? I know it's awful difficult to put together a lot of the information on these web pages without having the knowledge to navigate the information input. What I assume the budget being very tight, there's probably not, but
We don't have any new positions in this budget, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that company has a training to end up updating stuff on the website. A couple of years back, and let me I know that people don't like to say a couple of years back, and that's old stuff. But a couple of years back, there was two of us that attended the training session, and we were ready to go with it. We're ready to archive and everything else. We went to go use it, what we had learned, and we couldn't. In fact, we had the trainer try to end up making the changes. Well, it seems that the person that's in charge of the entire website didn't give us the ability to take and do that. I don't know if that's changed now, but it appears that when Lee made some changes, he had the ability to make those changes on the website per se. So it didn't take somebody on the outside. If somebody has a little bit of knowledge about the web page, they can end up archiving, because archiving, as I recall on the training, and you can get it, like I said, from the company, they do have regular training sessions. It's not that hard of a process to archive some of the old stuff that's on there and put some of the new stuff on, and maybe change some of the stuff that's there.
are you looking to volunteer to do this, Will? I know as far as work with, I don't know, we can look into who gives permissions to update our web page. Uploading minutes, I'm still going to continue doing through the town clerk section to where I've been putting them. But if you something you're interested in, I can try to get some more information for you on the webpage itself.
Well, I'd like to volunteer, but I just, that's too much of a task, especially, I find more and more times I have to spend longer times to take and do something. Somebody that's more technically oriented would probably have a better time to end up doing the site. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, Tom. You brought it up. You're going to volunteer. Well, I'd like to. That's why I ended up stating we need to make some changes. Am I the person to make those changes? Technically, I don't think I have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking is because I didn't want to be, overstepping if that's something that you were passionate about wanting to do. I know I'll be honest, I do not have the time to spend a lot of time on a web page or the, web knowledge as far as putting together web pages. There's web designers out there that do that.
I'm willing to help anybody, and say, okay, maybe we should archive this or that. But the technical ability, I think that's, I'm finding I'm getting less and less technically able to do some of these things.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments on the webpage? I think it's I understand what Will's saying, but at the same time, it's also an additional task if people are something they're interested in. If not,
can we use some of our expense monies for that?
Don't know if we can. I'd have to look into if we could use expense money. You mean to have somebody do it?
Yes.
I'd have to check with how our expenses are set up, because I know there's expenses and there's support services and there's personnel. So I'd have to see what accounting would allow to come out of certain accounts on that. So I don't have an answer for you on that, Will. I certainly can look into that.
Well, this is not unbudgeted and not anticipated until it was just brought up. So I don't know about the emergency reserve either. I'm just bringing up options that we could look at.
Yeah, we certainly can explore those. I don't know if it might look a little funny for us to transfer our own money into our own account to do our own webpage. But it's certainly, if it's a legitimate thing and it's unexpected, we can work on possibly that.
Just as a point, Mr. Chairman, we have the advisory committee actually had to use the emergency reserve a number of years back because we had an expense that was not anticipated and not budgeted when we had so many pre-town meetings, and we had to actually transfer monies because we didn't have any.
That is certainly always a possibility on something like that. And then, like I said, it's something we can certainly look to. We can look to having a college intern work on it. There's programs out there for web design interns. I'm not sure on I'd have to speak with the town clerk on the permissions end, because there are certain permissions and certain liabilities to having people uploading things to your web page. So I think we'd also have to be a little cautious on that, but there are a number of options. I certainly would entertain anyone bringing forward, some of the different options and I can get some information on, from the web, as far as on the web page from Town Hall on that.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, I would be happy to take and end up helping that individual by saying, we need to take and archive this or that. It's the older stuff and move some stuff around if we could get somebody to actually do the technical stuff.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else on that? Okay, next on the agenda is to, Will, you had wanted to talk about making recommendations on the FY22 structural deficit. We kind of covered that with did you have some other things that Adam didn't cover when he was going through his one-time monies presentation with the possible deficits and outgoing years? Did you have anything additional on that?
Well, I know that Adam brought up about level funding. And my question would be that that's not possible to taking it up even to 22 to level fund and save some additional monies rather than a level services?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I was instructed by the board to provide a level service budget. I've continued to do so, and I will do that budget as tight as I can. And I think the fact that we were able to get it in less than 0.5% from an increase from last fiscal year, the original appropriation has been pretty significant. I look forward to the discussions with the select board and the advisory committee at the workshop. And I think if anybody chooses to make any additional cuts, they can be made at that point.
Does anyone have anything else on this topic that we haven't covered already?
Well, the 0.5% represents a substantial amount of money. I'd like to have that amount of money in my pocket. I think it's around $50,000.
Right now, I'm actually at 0.25% of an increase from last fiscal year. 0.25%.
Keep going, Adam. We'll be at positive numbers and we'll be gaining extra money.
There's much.
I have to agree with the chairman. Keep talking so that we can actually underfunded this budget and have access.
Not much left.
All right. Next on the agenda is to discuss possible FY21 current budget actions to assist at free cash. I know that's something that Will had brought up, and obviously that I think all the department heads by Adam have been encouraged to spend only what they need. I think they're, having talked to a few of the department heads, they may grumble a little bit, but I think they're very much trying to do their best to provide the services to the town, while at the same time, if they really don't need that extra piece of equipment, having it remaining in their budgets at the end of the year. I think some of the old years and the old time of quickly spending all your money is not here. And the department heads know that from what I've seen. I think they're pretty, there's a good group of department heads here in town. And I think they're willing to work with, and I can only say this from the ones that I've talked to or that have come before the other committee. And I think they're very knowledgeable on if they can find something that, explain to a vendor, well, we're not going to be able to do this if you don't, cut some money off here, and advice, maybe I don't need this piece of equipment. Can you find something different, a little bit, a quality that'll still do the job, but a little lesser. So I think they're working on that a lot. Obviously we can't, unexplained expenses that they have out of their budgets are hard to understand, and hopefully we'll have our full amount to be able to give back if we don't have departments have some serious unexplained things that need to come for transfers. So I'm not sure on how to go about it. Will, did you have anything? How did you want to approach that?
I was just thinking that maybe we actually make a recommendation to the selectmen to end up, I know Adam's working it, but having the selectmen actually weigh in on it also by having us recommend that they watch the expenses, especially like the stuff about the insurance. Every year, in the last three years, we've been overfunded in that one by substantial amount of money. I hope in 22, Adam, we are not a couple of $100,000 like we have $200,000 or $300,000 in that particular account. And I do know that stuff increases, but that's too much money when you have $200,000 or $300,000, $250,000 to $350,000 in past years. And I think this last year, even after we transferred a bunch of money out of it, we still had about 100. I'm not sure about the actual number, but it's somewhere around 150,000 plus or minus that we had as excess in this. So I really like to take and see some of that tighten up and give you an opportunity to take and end up making sure we're funded on other stuff.
So you're talking going forward, Will, in the FY22 budget, not necessarily FY21 actions that would assist in the free cash?
Yes, I'm saying that we should make a recommendation to the selectmen to end up having the everybody watch their budgets. Recommend that they watch their budgets and see if there's opportunities to take and end up saving some additional monies so that we can have some free cash generated this year, because we're going to end up needing it possibly in 23 and 24, and I don't want to take it and end up going into stabilization. That's to me that's the last resort.
My only question with that, Will, is I think we're getting on a slope of looking to, I don't want to say interfere, because that's probably not the right word, on the day-to-day expenses, day-to-day operations that I think are the board and the town administrator and the department heads. I know we need to overlook the expenses, but I think we also have to allow the departments and the town administrator to go forward and to do their jobs too. They seem to do them very well, and I think that we have to be cautious in our board's interest in the day-to-day activities, that it's not necessarily what we're here, in an advisory capacity on that, but it's just an odd.
It's a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, to take and watch the expenses so that we can end up helping out in the future years. If you don't wish to go that way, that's fine.
I mean, shouldn't they be doing that anyway? I mean, I don't mean to discount what you're saying, Will, because maybe a gentle reminder here or there doesn't hurt, but shouldn't they be watching their expenses anyway?
And it sounds to me that, Adam's already said that they are doing that.
I agree, Deb. Adam, I'm sure that you've talked with different department heads, and I mean, in a day-to-day conversation, that the board of selectmen may still say to watch the spending, but the department heads they still need to follow that. And I think that's the key, is that the conversation's been had with the town administrator and the department heads that make the purchases, and I do think it's a good starting point for that.
Well, the reason I bring it up, Mr. Chairman, is we're the financial watchdogs of the community, and that's part of our job, is to take and end up trying to watch and help with the finances and make recommendations. We're not going to take it. We're not going to control it, but we can recommend that they take some efforts that they can do it, and I think that's appropriate for us to make a recommendation. It's that goes along with what they're trying to do.
Mike Curry is making a comment on YouTube. The big three are aware, and smaller departments don't have much to work with.
If I could also chime in.
Yes, go ahead.
We're also looking at all the options available. Many of you know health insurance is a significant cost to municipalities. And right now, not sure if you're aware, but we went into a joint purchasing group with a couple other towns. The select board have since signed that agreement, the joint purchasing agreement, and we will be going out to the marketplace for health insurance. And we will see how those come in. I've since was able to, in the budget itself, put health insurance rates going up at 0, because I do believe the bigger the pool, the more people you have in it. I expect this to be beneficial to the town. Also, we're looking at printers, copiers, getting quotes, going back out to the marketplace there. We're doing everything we can to get the best quotes that we can for the benefit of the town to cut down on our recurring expenses moving forward. It's these measures that a lot of the other department heads are taking, our office is taking, and really just staying proactive when we see an opportunity to really do what we have to do in order to keep those budgets down as much as we possibly can.
We have one question coming in from Scott Dill. Does the advisory board have the total amount of unspent funds from the line items of departments that are rolled back into free cash or the general account at the end of each fiscal year? Which would be the budget versus actual, right? That we get monthly and then the end of the year.
Yeah,
So,
that would be
yes.
in the end of the year budget to actual. I do not have last year's in front of me as far as the total amounts. There's usually quite a bit, but as also, I mean, I know Will's pointed out the insurance one, but at the end of the year, if all of it doesn't get spent, that's a good thing. And it didn't get spent on another budget and it didn't get spent elsewhere. So even though it was line items for insurance, it still gets turned back into free cash. So even though it's not spent and it could have been budgeted elsewhere, it's kind of I don't want to say it ends up being like a short-term savings account that goes into the following year's free cash. So it's hard to budget some of those, but it does in the long term come back to the town and didn't get spent by another budget. So it still ends up being a savings back to us.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything else on free cash? Anything else that you guys, and Adam, the last couple things Will had wanted to bring up, discussing a couple documents. I don't know if Adam will go on to the next item. If he wants to stay, you're certainly welcome. Will, you wanted to bring up the DLS document on annual budget process. I know the town's got their budget process that they follow. DLS is certainly a recommendation on that. They do seem to, looking it over, they seem to go through, follow a majority of the things on there, a lot of them. But you wanted to bring it up, feel free to go ahead and bring it up.
That document pretty well follows the Association of Town Finance, especially getting the select board, the advisory of finance committee, and the school together in November to take and end up talking about the upcoming budget. And that's why I brought it up, is make a recommendation to the select board to end up trying to doing a better job of following that document. That's a recommendation by the Division of Local Services to communities. I mean, they don't put these documents out and update them for nothing. And I would like to see that. I mean, yes, that's critical of our present process, but we're going to be critical of a lot of things within town government. We shouldn't take those as negative. We should look at those as opportunities to take a look at these things and try to make the process better.
Well, I agree, Will, but and also as you pointed out earlier in the meeting about Department of Labor Standards and that, I'm not really sure how many communities they actually work with. I assume as I said before, I assume they work with a lot of communities, but as you pointed out, they may not. I think the town right now seems to go forward looking down at least the one-page document that you put out on it, seems to put together pretty much hit almost all the marks on that. But that was just from my reading over the page.
Well, the major point was right at the very beginning, the first paragraph that I looked at. That's not a process that we follow.
Well, the calendar begins with, you don't have your revenue projections in November, unfortunately. I think they're barely getting them now in February. They can recommend, I think that's in a perfect world, if, every year by the fall, they were getting our accurate numbers, but they had accurate numbers. They told us we'd have them in October, November, December. And Adam, I don't know if you've got exact numbers yet.
Well, it's an opportunity to get better because I see other communities able to make those revenue projections earlier than we are.
Well, maybe we're just not able to do that.
then why not at least look at it and end up saying that?
Do you know that they don't? I'm just playing devil's advocate, Will. I mean,
I understand that, Tony, but at least I'm bringing it up as a point of trying to end up getting things better. If nobody wants to address it, that's fine. At least it's been brought up by this committee to end up looking at that process and try to get the town's process better
but
of revenues, etc.
revenue projections are so, there's so many variables that go into it. So trying to figure out your next year 4 months into a fiscal year is probably pretty tough.
Well, you have the state has on their website, you can actually do projections for at least 3 to 5 years, on expenses and revenues.
Well,
so I mean that's a document that can be used to end up seeing how we're doing.
but I guess I'll ask Adam. Do you try to look at your projections early, just to have an idea what they're going to be?
We do our best to forecast. I mean, the state UGGA dollars, a couple of the other ones are a little bit difficult, but I can say on my call with the Division of Local Services on the forecasting, that was a recommendation back in 2009 that the town has now been complying with that requirement. Now, is it the best forecast? I can't specifically say that where the state aid is going to come or where meals tax is going to come, but I could do my best at doing a 5-year projection. And to, like I've shared with folks up to fiscal year 25, we're doing the best we can to gauge our expenses. And if we're level funding, our expenses stay the same, and doing the best we can with our revenues. We continually look at ways to improve. And as long as we're providing a plan, I think that's the ingredient here moving forward.
Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anyone else have anything else on this document? All right, next up, Will, you want to talk about the DLS quarterly budget projections?
After we had just gone through that document, I don't see any need for they can end up bringing that. I can see that there's no consensus on this committee that they can look at those documents and make recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak on the DLS documents on quarterly budget projections? Okay, next on the agenda is committee members' comments. Good on the list. Tony, you have anything that you wanted to add under committee members' comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, Will?
Can you give me a minute and come back to me after?
Certainly. Deb?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Amy?
No, I'm all set today. Thank you.
Okay, and I have nothing additional other than I appreciate you guys all, doing an input. It's been kind of a lengthy meeting. We'll be going back to Will shortly, but going forward, the more as far as agenda items, as we put things on, we'll address them and work forward on that, working together, not working against each other, hopefully. And I think that as we move forward as a board into these tougher financial years, that we'll be able to work with the town administrator, work with the Board of Selectmen, and not feel that we have to work against them. I think that's very important for our committee, being watchful of the finances, but also very important to not feel that we have to do something just for the sake of doing something against them. We can work together. So, Will, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend that, Mr. Chairman, that any documents that we have also get put up as part of the package, or as documents that when you put the minutes up on the website, that they're included so people know what we actually looked at. As an example, we talked about the sidewalk thing. I don't think that's a document that everybody sees per se. It would be good to include that and say, oh, okay, look at, they hit all these points. and talked about these things, communities, the plow, etc. I mean, I'd like to take and end up seeing us include those also, Mr. Chairman.
We can do our best to include things. Certainly from there, I mean, if we don't have a document and we just talked about it, that's one thing. We can, Deb and I worked out a procedure to where we're going to pretty much have the meeting minutes so that they're up the following day. I already looked at doing it. However, during the meeting, I don't believe you can add it. So it would be, they will be up there tomorrow. I know there was some concern. So going forward, that has been addressed. So we are working on those type of things.
Yep.
We certainly can continue to work on putting as much information out there. I'm not going to redundantly constantly put things that are on other web pages also. There are certain things out there that people can read, and we certainly can add what we can to help them. But a lot of that stuff they can look at and go through ClearGov that we started with too. And I think the Board of Selectmen had been working on making sure that the information goes out there more, and as people look to see projections and that. So there's a lot of different avenues, but we can do our best to add things to the.
One comment, I'd like to take and end up congratulating both, applauding both of you to take and end up getting us caught up on the meeting minutes. I know I was critical. We were way behind. We shouldn't have not ever got into that. But my only comment around that is there's still some meeting minutes. If somebody has a chance to take a look and find some, that they should pass them on to you so that they can also be incorporated. And looking at the overall meeting minutes, they can end up addressing Tony's point that he made some time back. There are meetings that we have attended with other groups, and it's in the attendance of them. We don't generate meeting minutes. We're there to take and end up as advisory, to take and end up doing discussion, and it's the minutes of that meeting that should be referenced, and that happened a number of times that we met with the selectmen, etc. And there's a number of times we've met in that capacity.
Thank you, Will, and we will work on certainly continuing to go back and forth. We just added a few more back ones yesterday, I believe. So it's a project, and we're probably never going to get caught up with everything, but we want to try to get caught up a little bit with the past, as well as at the same time moving things forward, going forward with the future. So, Deb, did you have something or anything on the chat?
Nope, nothing on the chat. And with regards to Will's comments, when you provide those links to documents like the DLS documents and things like that, that's an easy. I can put a hyperlink to those documents right in the notes, so that if folks wanted to go and review the document themselves, the hyperlink's there, so they can just click on it. It should take them right to the website. The other documents, I wouldn't. Tom would, if you choose to upload them with the notes. Excuse me. That would be something that you would have to do, but the links I can put in there.
No, I mean, the document for the sidewalk plow, that's not something you can link to. That was an email that we received.
Right.
Select board have
That's
this.
all.
Oh,
Go ahead, Deb.
I was just going to say the select board.
No, I was just saying that's all.
Adam, go ahead.
I was going to say the select board have it in their packet. So if people go on My Town Government, they could click on the packet and just the whole report plus the memorandums right there, as well as the loader, which I just sent out today. So if people are interested in reviewing the materials.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. Is it possible to get the agenda for us earlier than the 48 hours? Maybe for some members, if they don't have the time, to give them the time, especially over the weekend. I know the selectmen, they put it up on a Thursday for a Wednesday meeting. I'd like to see us try to attempt to do it a little earlier if we could.
Certainly, I can put it out realistically anytime. The only reason I try to wait is because as things get added, we can add to the agenda. Like I said, I don't want to have to make, update the agenda 36 times. So I kind of wait till the end to put it out. If we want to, as a committee, say, have our ideas in by Friday, I'll put the agenda out for the meeting on a Friday. I have no issue on any day. I just try to give you guys as much opportunity as possible to come up with topics.
Well, I brought that up to try to get it out earlier. If a topic does come out, I don't see us dumping a whole bunch of topics. It can be, the agenda can be updated, say on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it still makes the requirements. But at least we would have a biggest majority of the agenda already, and we could be doing some research or looking at it or trying to take and end up equating this to what the impact is.
Yeah, I can certainly put it out earlier. As things get added, I'll do my best after that to try to make those additions. But just keep in mind, once it's out, at that point, unless it's something major, I probably will be put off to the next meeting. But
That's all I'm asking is to make your best effort to see if we can get it out earlier to help us all out.
I can do that. Anybody have anything else? All right, if no one's got anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. By somebody?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, I'll listen. Tony?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you guys all, and all you have a good night. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.